Welcome to Take the Lead Radio with Dr. Diane Hamilton, where she interviews some of the most successful leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, and other individuals who will inspire you to take the lead in your career and personal life. And now, here is Dr. Diane Hamilton.
I am here with Chris Voss, who's the author of the national bestseller, Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as If Your Life Depended on It. He's a keynote speaker, negotiation consultant, and award-winning business school professor. After 24 years as a lead FBI hostage negotiator, Chris founded the Black Swan Group, a firm that solves business communication problems with hostage negotiation strategies. He's used his many years of experience in international crisis and high-stakes negotiations to develop a unique program and team that applies these globally proven techniques to the business world. Chris currently teaches business negotiation in the MBA program as an adjunct professor at University of Southern California and also teaches at Georgetown University. It's so nice to have you here, Chris.
Thank you very much. It's absolutely my pleasure to be on with you.
I have to admit, you're the first one I've ever talked to who has been a hostage negotiator. I mean, kidnapping and all that for the FBI must have been, wow. How'd you get into that?
I couldn't sing or dance.
Well, there you go. End of story.
Yeah, it's like everything else in life, it's just one left turn after another. And it was really more because some of the best things in my life have happened to me as a result of bad things. And so I'd torn up my knee when I was in college. That limited the amount of time I could be on the SWAT team. I was on a SWAT team with FBI Pittsburgh. And re-injured the knee again, and then realized that they could only put it back together so many times. And I knew we had hostage negotiators because they went out with the SWAT guys. I didn't know what they did. But, I figured how hard could it be? You talk to people. And it ended up just being so much more interesting, and I got to do so much more than I ever could have as a SWAT guy. That was fantastic.
How hard was it?
It's there's a lot to it.
Yeah, I would think.
Making it look easy. I'm often reminded of you listen to a great radio host, a great talk show host like Ryan Seacrest, probably a classic example.
I thought you were going to say Diane Hamilton, but go ahead.
Diane Hamilton.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But there's so many people out there trying it, doing just a horrible job.
Right.
And the people that are really good at it make it look effortless.
Yes, that's true.
And it's not easy getting to that point. You can do it if you put in the time. The hard thing is you're willing to put in the time and learn.
Right. Well, like anything. I mean, but I would be fascinated to watch a movie where they have hostage negotiating going on. Is it pretty close to reality, or are you just going, oh, please?
Most of it's pretty bad, but The Negotiator was Samuel Jackson and Kevin Spacey, except for a few critical moments in that. We used to use portions of that when we were teaching hostage negotiations. So that's actually a pretty good film.
Oh, that's good to know. I mean, did you have the megaphone and the put your gun down type? I mean, is that how it really is? I mean, do people really want to talk to you, and do you give them the phones? And I mean, I'm just curious about this part before we go on to what you do now. It just fascinates me.
Yeah, you want to get them on the phone as quick as you can. You could. A megaphone is a bad thing because it's hard to sound reassuring over a megaphone, but you can do it. But get them on a phone as quick as you can and diagnose the situation and apply the right Jedi mind tricks.
Well, you must handle stress very well. I mean, SWAT, this. I mean, these are very stressful jobs. I mean, have you always been able to handle stress really well?
Yeah, I don't know. I think everybody handles different forms of stress really well. So it depends upon. It really depends upon if you think you got a process that can handle things as well as they could be handled. And any time that I felt like I had a good process, which the whole strategy from hostage negotiation into business is a great process. And then it's remarkable knowing not that you're guaranteed success, but that you're guaranteed your best chance of success.
Oh, what was your most famous success case? Do you have any that we would recognize?
Wow. Well, the old saying, if it leads, it bleeds, or if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we were successful, it didn't get a
You didn't
really
hear
high
about it.
profile.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
One that we were behind the scenes on that I got a really big kick out of at the time. There's a Fox News reporter named Steve Santani that got grabbed in the Gaza Strip,
Oh.
probably about 2005-ish,
Mm-hmm.
and he and his cameraman just like literally just vanished.
Wow.
And the Gaza Strip is a small contained environment, so the initial feedback was that the guys were just dead, and that's why there was, because you can't make people vanish.
Mm-hmm.
But once the negotiations, and we coached negotiations in that,
Mm-hmm.
and once they got started, they initially got started bad, and the people were coaching, we said, no, say this instead, this is more. And I knew that the bad guys, as soon as they knew that there was somebody that knew what they were doing on the other side, we came to a deal very quickly, and Santani and his cameraman got out really fast.
Wow. Well, when you come to deals by not splitting the difference, is that where you what do you mean by never split the difference in the title of your book?
Yeah, well, like if we were going to split the difference between the journalist and his cameraman, what are we going to? We'll take the journalist and keep the cameraman.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You keep the tall, skinny one. We'll get the short, heavy one.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I can't even imagine what you'd even negotiate with that. But I'm curious, in the business world, you help people negotiate what contracts? What are you helping them negotiate?
Splitting the difference is always a bad idea. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
people need to get that in their head. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you should be open to the idea. What most people view as compromise, splitting the difference is not the same as a high value trade.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding what you're trading for, and be open to the idea that the other side might be completely right. Invest in your objective and not in your ego.
I like that. Okay. So, well, how do they know if their ego is getting the best of them? I mean, what are the best and the worst trades that you've seen that were based on, either having ego get in the way or not get in the way?
Yeah, it was. There were two companies that merged recently. I was told about this merger behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And in the industry they were in, one was very traditional and one was a new rising star company.
Mm-hmm.
And through the course of the merger, they also had the opportunity to buy a building because they wanted a state-of-the-art learning facility, and they were considering a new headquarters because their old headquarters was old. And they got the opportunity to buy an $800 million building for $200 million. And it was this phenomenal facility that was state-of-the-art.
Right.
Now, the CEO of the traditional company, and he was going to remain the CEO in the merger, he said, the optics here are really bad. And if we move into this building and use it as our headquarters, we're going to look to our clientele, to our customers, as if we're being lavish on ourselves. And it's going to make us look bad. And the CEO of the Rising Star company, who was going to be the number 2 in the new version, he said,
Right.
You got to be kidding me. We're going to save $600 million.
Right.
We're going to solve 2 problems simultaneously and save $600 million. Are you kidding me? So what did they do? They split the difference. Since it was a deal they couldn't pass up, they went ahead and bought the building, but they only moved the new learning facility into it. They kept the headquarters at the old building, which was old for optical reasons, and consequently are spending literally blowing millions of dollars because of their fear of the optics.
Just
so not only are they
perception,
wasting tons of money, but the number 2 guy is still so mad at the massive waste of money that he's going to end up leaving the company and take some of his executives with him. So they're going to lose a lot of their leadership over the traditional CEO's ego over optics.
So what would you advise them? And doesn't there have to be somebody that doesn't get what they want?
Well, you recalibrate what's in people's heads.
Okay.
Like, do you, and you take what's in somebody's head, and that's the entire purpose of tactical empathy. I mean, I actually really need to know what your
Tactical
perception
empathy.
is.
I like that. Tactical empathy. Okay.
Yeah, well, first of all, I gotta get out of you what's actually in your head and what you're
Right.
most afraid of. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we're more driven by fear than we are driven by gain.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, then as a cliche that everybody hates, but it's absolutely true, is perception is reality.
Right.
First, I got to know what your perception is. Then I got to know what the comparisons that you're making on your head. And chances are, if you're doing something that makes no sense, the comparison in your head needs to change. Now, you're not going to let me change that if you feel attacked and argued with.
Right.
Because you're only going to dig in deeper. And you're only going to get madder.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to lose sight of what the real objective was. Because the real objective is, what's best for our company? Was there a point in time, we appear to be a very traditional company now because we've been here for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But the company was probably originally built based on that they were cutting edge, innovative company when you were first created.
Right. Right.
Have you forgotten that at one point in time you were cutting edge, innovative company? If that image was good for you then, what makes it bad for you now? And so you get to the comparisons in people's heads, and,
mm-hmm.
and then you ask, really, there's great power in deference.
Mm-hmm.
You get people to think by asking them questions deferentially. And then you say, what happened to our branding that made being innovative and cutting edge a bad thing?
That's so interesting. I mean, I'm going back to your tactical empathy. I mean, I wrote my dissertation, emotional intelligence and empathy is a big part of that. And you're putting yourself in someone else's position, and I find this all very fascinating. I'm curious. You're pretty much working on having them review their thought process of how they view things. Do you also give in to anything, or you just never split the difference? You don't give in at all.
Well, I got to be open to be persuaded also.
Mm-hmm.
Like you may in fact have a better idea than me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I might be the one who's seeing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If I can dig into your thought pattern, maybe what you're driving is a better idea than mine. You're just having trouble articulating it effectively.
Well, how do you dig into that thought pattern?
Well, all right. So I'll shift gears, but hopefully it's analogous.
Okay.
Negotiation between a husband and a wife over a Christmas tree.
Okay.
Husband wants a real tree, an artificial tree. Wife wants a real tree.
Boy, I can relate to
Husband's
that.
got all sorts of practical reasons for the artificial tree.
Uh-huh.
We know what it looks like. We buy it once. We never have to buy it again. It doesn't catch on fire. It doesn't, when we take it down, put it up, it doesn't leave needles everywhere. There's no danger here. We have pets. The cat's not going to climb in an artificial tree. The dog's not going to mark an artificial tree.
All
and
good points.
the wife's not hearing all logical, rational
Mm-hmm.
points. And the wife just is not hearing it. So she just no.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, all right, so whatever's driving her has got to be, maybe it's deeper in her psyche. So you use something that's what we refer to as a label, because a label is better than a question for gathering information. This tool that we refer to as a label, one of our clients in real estate refers to it as unlocking the floodgates of truth telling. You got to tap right into the stream of consciousness in somebody else's brain and remove the barriers and just get them to articulate what's going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so he uses a label. He's thinking this must be something in the hidden or blind quadrants. So he says, well, it's, maybe it had something to do with the childhood. So he says to her, it seems like you had real trees growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
And the memories of the smell of a real tree with my brothers and sisters and the great family memories I have that are triggered and the great feelings that are triggered and the closeness that's triggered by the smell of a tree.
Right.
And I want the same sort of stuff for our children. And at that point in time, he said, let's get a real tree.
Well, it didn't go that way at my house. I got a fake tree now.
Ah.
My husband was a better negotiator, apparently. That's interesting because I ended up liking this fake tree now. But I see what you're saying, that you have to see what's behind what people, what it is that's making them hold their ground. And if you don't ask questions, you're never going to get there, right? I mean, isn't question asking kind of like the first step?
Well, here, let's draw a line, because
Okay.
you ask questions to gather information.
Right.
Now, asking questions might not be the best way to gather information. Actually, in a lot of circumstances, it's one of the least efficient ways.
Why is that?
Because you ask a question and there's a part of my brain that goes, aha.
She's trying to trick me.
You're trying to pull information. Some questions are definitely trick-oriented. And some people, we believe the planet splits up evenly into thirds, regardless of gender or ethnicity. It has to do with the wiring of our amygdala and the limbic system, which everybody has, the caveman brain. And one of those types is what we refer to as the analytical type. And the analyst doesn't like to answer a question until they've thought it through from all angles and the implications of all their answers, which means it's hard to get a good answer out of an analyst in less than 2 days, and they probably want 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay.
We all know people like that.
Right.
But we found that the analysts will respond almost instantly in the moment to a label, because there's something about the way the label hits the brain that it doesn't cause an analyst to immediately go into analytical mode, and it has a much higher percentage of time where they just start giving you a download of their thoughts.
Like, give me an example there. I'm curious what you mean.
Well, all right, so let's go back to the real estate example. And they got people walking through open houses in real estate, and the commodity happens to be the house here, and you've got customers and clients that happen to be buyers.
Right.
And you got real estate agents there that are watching their buyers peruse the inventory.
Right.
Exactly the same way a shoe salesman in Macy's going to watch you, a clothing salesman in Nordstrom's going to watch you. Any seller that has a buyer looking at the commodity.
Okay.
So the agents have found that after a buyer walks through and they say, "What do you think?" It's a good open-ended question, good calibrated question. Your calibrated open-ended question should start with either the words what or how, if you use them at all. So what do you think? Should be a good question. And they said, well, people say like, well, I like it. I'm interested in this. We'll get back to you. But instead, if they say, seems like you saw some stuff that really interested you.
More
people
guided.
go, yeah, I saw this and I saw that. And we're thinking about this, and we're thinking about our kids, and we're thinking about where we want to be 5 years from now. And that's why this agent said a label unlocks the floodgates of truth-telling. And that's actually a very specifically designed statement, that the genius of the design is in its simplicity.
And you'd get negative comments if you directed it the other way. Like, was there anything you saw wrong with this kind of thing, right?
You could, yeah, because, and actually sometimes mislabeling stuff where we're trying to intentionally trigger a no, that unlocks a different set of floodgates.
Well, so you use all these techniques, and I was looking at some of your client results. And I mean, you've saved a major hospital in a deal that $200,000 on one deal. You saved somebody else $100,000 in this deal. Somebody increased profit by $2 million here. And so, how long does your process take when you work with somebody to get these kind of results?
All right. So it depends upon how much you possess one or two critical traits. One is openness. How coachable are you? How open you are to learning. Number two is, are you willing to do the work? I've run across people that are very good negotiators who weren't particularly open, but they were really hard workers, and they just stayed at it till they got it.
Right.
Some people, and the skills kind of fall into sort of three categories. Like, if you're good at asking questions, then you pick up the idea that you should be triggering no's instead of yeses. Some people get that nearly instantaneously. There are some people, the first and best way to say no to someone is, how am I supposed to do that? There are some people that pick that up nearly instantaneously. They immediately get to them. Now, they have a little more trouble with labels they have a little more trouble with summaries. Some people take to mirroring immediately. And there's a couple skills that you could get by almost only with that skill, and labels and mirrors are pretty close to that. And they love the mirroring is very close to a Jedi mind trick. And I've got one extremely intelligent client / friend who loves mirroring so much it's like all he does.
Can you give me an example? How he mirrors?
Give you an example?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying you teach him how to say or do certain things, and he's able to mimic. Is that what you're saying? What you've taught him, or what do you mean by mirrors exactly?
I just mirrored you.
Okay, I gotta think of what I just said. Say it again. Okay.
You said, can you give me an example? Now, I could have done one of two things.
Okay.
I could have simply given you an example. I could have said, what do you mean by example? Which would have gotten a fairly limited response. Or could have just said, give you an example, and then you went ahead and gave me like 3 or 4 more sentences. And involuntarily, so invisibly, you didn't even know you did.
You tricked me. I like that. This is interesting. So when you say, excuse me, when you say that people don't want to do the work, maybe they can do certain things, but one of the things that's hard for them is to do the work. What is the work exactly? Learning.
It's mostly just repetition of the skills. And people get the barrier to learning is not complexity. The barrier to learning is awkwardness. And so if the skill feels awkward,
right,
then they imagine the other person screaming at them and going, aha, that's a hostage negotiation skill. I saw the negotiator with Kevin Spacey. Don't ever do that to me again.
Well, it's kind of like being with a psychologist. You think they're always psychoanalyzing you, I guess, huh? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. People get really nervous. The other person's going to burst into flames.
Hate it when that happens. Well,
I hate it.
I hate it. Yeah.
Fire alarms go off. They call the fire department.
Well, what was your background? Do you have a psychology based training background, or do they teach you that in the FBI? I'm just curious where you got these skills.
I am a small town boy from Iowa.
Oh, really?
Barely got my undergraduate degree because I thought college was an excuse to join a fraternity.
And your degree was in what?
Well, it was at the time. It was at Iowa State University. They called it Industrial Administration, which has evolved into their School of Business there. So it was a business degree.
And so you teach now business courses, correct? And I'm just curious, what kind of courses?
Negotiation.
And so this is part of the MBA program that they have?
I have been teaching in the MBA programs at Georgetown University and USC, University of Southern California, for those of you in the Southeast, not the University of South Carolina.
And so, so do you get students up in class have to demonstrate, I would imagine? Is it?
I make them. They have no choice. I take them hostage.
Oh, that's great. I bet your course is really fun to take. I imagine it fills up. Do you have people that just feel uncomfortable? How do you get them over that? The discomfort of having to kind of let somebody into their head a little bit. You know what I mean?
Well, not so much letting somebody into their head, but more willing to try this stuff when they actually have skin in the game. That's what people are most afraid of.
Right.
And the quieter ones tend to be the better negotiators.
Why is that?
They listen more.
So you're more introverts.
Right, and they're more likely to not put the other side off. I mean, negotiation skills very similar to sales skills.
Right. Yeah.
Daniel Pink wrote a book called I think To Sell Is Human, and the data shows that the best extroverts are not the best salespeople.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I have decades of sales experience, and I remember when it started to get a focus on that, the difference between introverts and extroverts in sales. You tend to think they're all extroverts, and then that they actually listen a lot more.
Yeah.
Introverts.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right.
And they listen and they think about it in a lot greater depth.
Well, I'm sure you probably read the book Quiet Then by Susan Cain, which I think is an interesting look at the introverts and extroverts. And I think that we can learn a lot from our counterparts. So, if you don't have certain skills, you can learn them from just watching other people. So, do you get a lot of introverts or extroverts in your courses? I teach a lot online, so I get a lot of introverts. I'm curious in your courses.
I would say overall, there are probably people tend a little bit more towards the introverted side.
Yeah.
I think, the minority taking a negotiation class, which I'm sure that a guy who's really extroverted is going to think like, "Why? What do I need negotiation for? I'm great." So it's an elective. It's not a required class.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a really fun class, though. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I think I probably lean towards the introverted side. People that, when they can't quite peg you, some people say situational. What are you? Are you more of an omnivore? But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not energized with human contact. My former boss in the crisis negotiation unit, Gary Nessner, dead on introvert. We would teach all day long, and he couldn't wait to go out to some night spot that night to talk to people. Because talking to people energized him.
Yeah, right.
I'd teach all day long, and I'd enjoy the heck out of it, but I'd be exhausted at the end of the day.
Right. I think I'm on where you stand. I mean, I come out on the extrovert side, but then I need to go home and get over that too. And you can get too much for me, but I think what you do is so fascinating, and I could see why it would be so helpful to organizations. And I can't remember who introduced us, but I do remember them saying how interesting what you do is. And so I'm so glad that that you were able to be on the show. And I hope people read your book, Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as If Your Life Depended on It. And so, Chris Voss, can you just let everybody know how they could find out more about you and your book and your work?
All right, so the best avenue, the best gateway to everything that we do is a newsletter that we put out once a week called The Edge.
Okay.
And it's free, it's complimentary. A friend of mine used to like to say, if it's free, I'll take 3.
Yeah.
And the best way to subscribe to it is to send a text message, and it's got to be FBI empathy, all one word. Don't let your autocorrect put a space in between FBI and empathy. But FBI empathy, not case sensitive, all one word to the number 22828, and that's 22828. You get a text in return. They'll sign you up for the newsletter, and it's the gateway to our website, blackswanltd.com. It tells you about where we're training in different parts of the country, stuff, how we can help you individually or as a company. What we have that's free, more free stuff. And it's really the best gateway to everything that we do to help people make better deals. I mean, you can make a lot more money by just wasting less time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You don't necessarily have to take it out of the other side's hide.
Right. Oh, Chris, this was so fascinating. Thank you for being on the show today. I really enjoyed it.